Hi, this is Dr. Keith McAfee. Welcome to Medicine and Faith, where I take a subject of medicine and relate that to our faith. Today, we're going to talk about a very, very common phenomenon, everybody's favorite subject, warts. People hate them. There's just a virus, but let's talk about what they mean. Now, if you look at your skin, they have a very superficial level of skin called the epidermis, epi being Latin for above or over. That's where the word episcopal, episcope, overseer, episcopal comes from. And then you've got your deeper level called the dermis, okay, the dermal layer. This is very, very superficial. This is where the dead skin is that rubs off when it kind of grows up and then it rubs off. Now, the virus actually is just an infection, and the virus lives in the epidermis, the very superficial layer of the skin. It is not a deep infection. It's a very, very surface infection. But what it does is it causes the skin to build up this protective shell on top of it. It causes the skin to fluff up and keep fluffing up, and pretty soon you get this big mountain of skin that's kind of roughened and knobby, and you get them on your fingers, your hands, or wherever you're going to get them. But all of that dead skin is just extra skin on top of the virus as sort of a protective shell. Interestingly, actually, people talk about plantar warts, plantar meaning the bottom of the foot. People talk about plantar warts as if they're deep plantar warts, but in reality, they're actually still very superficial. If you turn this thing upside down and you have your skin with the big wart like this, and you step on it, all the pressure is going to be on there. That's not going to do. So what happens is it shoves the wart in, but it's still very, very superficial, and you get the wart part here, and the epidermis goes like this, and it's just, the epidermis just sort of gets pushed up into the foot, but the virus is still very superficial in the epidermis. It's not a deep thing at all. It's still superficial. It's just to get it shoved up into the foot because of the pressure. So, but the issue involved here is that the virus gets this big protective shell, big coating to protect itself. But indeed, they're really kind of small, insignificant little viruses in a very superficial, non-serious part of our skin, because viruses don't kill you. They're just obnoxious and nobody likes them. Now, to get rid of them, what do you have to do? You have to get rid of all that shell. You have to break that out somehow. You destroy it, either surgically or freezing, or there's a duct tape, yes, true duct tape treatment that works. But the whole point is you have to get rid of that shell. You have to get rid of that, and that exposes the virus. And then the virus, of course, being unprotected by the shell, can then be treated and gotten rid of. Oftentimes when we freeze these, because we have liquid nitrogen in our clinic, we freeze them, it kind of takes the roof and that shell off, but the wart isn't quite gone because the virus was deep enough to be underneath this, superficial as it might be, it's deep relative to the shell, and so then we have to treat it a second time, 10 or 14 or 21 days later, because now that the shell is off, the virus is sort of naked and exposed, liquid nitrogen, easy to get rid of. So oftentimes we have to do 2 treatments. Now, think about our spiritual lives. How often do we have little kind of superficial, minor, not dangerous to our lives, things, habits in our lives, different things, but what we do is we like them. They're kind of superficial, they're not a big deal in our lives, plus or minus, but we kind of like them, so we kind of build up these protective, defensive shells. We don't want to get rid of them because they become either pleasurable or comfortable or whatever. And so we have these big shells we protect of defensiveness or whatever because we like those things, and what happens? Well, if we're going to get rid of them because there's still an infection that God doesn't like and that we really shouldn't like, God has to somehow get rid of that protective shell to expose those things so we will get rid of them. That's typically painful. It's typically not welcome. I do not like when God calls me to task over little things in my life, but I would just prefer to keep thank you very much. But that's the way he does. Get rid of the shell, exposes the little habits and the preferences and the priorities that we have that we kind of want to defend, and then we realize, yeah, maybe they're not worth it after all, and that allows God then to get rid of those. So oftentimes when we do have those times in our lives when we feel like maybe things aren't going well for us, maybe it's because God's trying to get rid of some shells and there's something underlying it that we should take a look at that's not worth our keeping. So I encourage you, just like I encourage myself, we see these things all the time. Let's be thankful for the time God gets rid of those defensive shells, because we really should be rid of them. It's a good thing. This is Dr. Keith McAfee. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you would like to see other such video logs, please go to my website, KeithMcAfee.com. There you'll also learn about my book, Breathe, A Physician's Stories and Reflections on Prayer, published by Westbow Press, a series of 45 true stories from a medical career, and how that relates to our prayer life. Thank you very much for listening. I look forward to talking to you again soon.